All right, hello, and welcome back to another edition here on The Full Ride on the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. Fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green, also here at this time every single week. Matt, good evening, sir. How are you doing?
Good evening, sir. It is good to be back. We are ever so close to college football. I can taste it.
How many days, in fact?
We are. There's some debated topics here, because obviously we got week 0 coming up.
You're not doing the Penn State thing. That's where I thought that was going. It was a very strong "we are," and I thought you were doing a Penn State bit.
No.
That's their thing. They go, we are.
We are. Like, who? That's like trademarking the, like, come on.
Well, I don't know. The Ohio State University is pretty cool.
Is it We Are SC? Isn't that their thing too?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Or they Fight On is kind of their thing.
Fight On is more what I think about. What we are is definitely Penn State.
I've definitely heard. Also, We Are Fox Sports. That's what I was thinking. We are. Braves baseball. I hear that. But anywho, we are 9 days until the real week 1 Saturday college football season begins. Obviously, we're gonna be blessed with some games before then, but we are 9 days away. So the greatest number 9 of all time. Did you have a name or two that jumped out to you?
Number 9's not a big one. I had a bunch of number 8s. Not a lot of number 9.
First one I thought it was Peter Warwick. Peter Warwick, I feel like that's like me being like 9-10 years old. Like some of my first memories, really like watching college football, and he was just a superstar. Obviously, Steve McNair, Alcorn State was big time. Mario Williams was another one I remember, number 9. But even though
Kenneth Murray, was he number 9?
Kenneth Murray, I'm not even.
Bryce Young's number 9, isn't he?
Bryce Young is number 9, but
okay.
All of that comes short to really just the one season in 2019 of Joe Burrow. That's the best number 9, the best individual season basically in the history of college football. So Joe Burrow, like we've never seen a jump from year 1 to year 2 of a starter ever like Joe Burrow. Like, and everyone wants to, maybe we learned from 2019 to 2020, like, oh, who's going to be the next Joe Burrow? Who's going to make that jump? Like, nobody, because it's absurd the jump he made to throw like 44 more touchdown passes than he did the year before. Just 60 touchdowns, 6 picks. Joe Burrow was insane. So yeah, Joe Burrow, number 9 days till college football.
Huge loss for Trevor Lawrence in that front too. We talked about that, I think, last week on the pod, where it's like Joe Burrow's random resurgence in Baton Rouge, and a big reason why.
But 2019, if it's not Joe Burrow, it's probably Justin Fields, right? When Fields was actually, I think Jalen Hurts was the runner-up at Oklahoma, and then I think Fields finished 3rd. So, as good as Lawrence was, he's just a really good. He's a great college player, but he didn't have those individual Heisman seasons. He was just
because he wasn't up and down. It wasn't like one of those where he progressed. He didn't have the trajectory where he was. But I mean, even
I feel like he was a finished product. Yeah, when he walked on campus, it's not like a knock on him. He's already 6'5", whatever. Just an NFL prototype quarterback.
Well, you know how they developed down there in Cartersville, Georgia. The Purple Hurricanes is a tradition unlike any other. That's what they do.
Sure, they're a power 3A. I think they're a powerhouse for sure.
Good uniforms, good history there.
Quality uniforms. I definitely respect the unis.
Yeah, they got canes on the gold helmets.
Purple and gold. Cool. Yeah, they're solid.
I think it's purple and gold, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah, purple and gold. Yeah. Well, don't forget, folks, you can check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure you're subscribed every single day. New content on this very feed. You can also watch us on youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Like and subscribe. All kinds of great video content as we continue growing out the YouTube page. Follow Matt at Matt_Dev_Green. Follow myself at Chase_Thomas. You can also email this very program at chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you guys. Mailbag stuff, questions in the college football realm. Shoot them over. chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Matt Green, Where are we going first? Are we starting with Nick Saban, who signed an extension to make him continue to basically make him the highest paid coach in college football, and the man will be coaching at least until 2030. And it's funny because I don't know if you caught him on Dan Patrick's show last week, but Dan asked him about like whether or not he would retire, or was thinking about retirement, and it was just the answer that Nick gave. It was quite clear that man has no interest in life without roaming the sidelines, where it's like, I mean, this is what I like to do. I'm good at it. And as long as I'm good at doing this thing that I very much enjoy, why would I stop until they tell me I have to stop? So on one hand, good for him, man. That's what we all want in life, is to find that thing that we just love doing and we just are really good at it, and we just keep going until one day they just force us out. But man, thinking about 7 more years at the minimum is a lot, but good for him, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, and this doesn't even really guarantee that he's going to be around for 7 more years, right? I mean, it's just like he's just going to get paid, because the last thing you want to do is look like a lame duck coach and like, oh, who knows how much time he's got left or whatever. Like, I'm under contract for 8 years. You don't worry about me, But he obviously could hang it up at any time if, health became an issue or whatever. But I mean, you look at the guy like Mac Brown. Turns 71 or 70, whatever. They're the same age. They're either 70 or 71. Mac Brown's turning 71, like I think next week. Nick Saban turns 71 in like October. Mac Brown looks 71. Like he looked like Bobby Bowden looked at 71. And Bobby Bowden, that was the first person I looked when I heard about this contract. He retired at 80. And like he was almost kind of pushed out too at 80. He probably would have coached a little longer if he wanted to. But he was also felt old for a while at 80. Like Nick Saban doesn't even seem old yet. Like, yeah, like he is 70, about to be 71 years old, but there's no reason to think he's gonna be hanging up anytime soon. Like he's the GOAT. And he doesn't really have to work as hard as other guys do at this point. Like people, like the transfer portal, like I'm convinced that like they don't even reach out to people in the transfer portal. Like they reach out to Alabama when they're in the portal. Like they pick and choose who they want for the most part. So yeah,
well, it is a misnomer in the portal stuff, is that when you talk to coaches and people in the know, is that like there's this idea that the tampering stuff where it's like the coaches and the programs are the ones going after kids. It's very much the other way around, where kids are put in the portal and calling other coaches and talking to other players and being like, hey, can I come over? Or what do you think about me going over there? Like, it's very much more the players are.
I mean, Alabama's the gold standard, right? You're like, well, you guys have a weakness at cornerback. Like, I could come in and play cornerback for you for a year. They're like, yeah, let's do it. Like their wide receiver recruiting is honestly like as good as it's been. They've needed to hit up the portal a lot recently, but it's like they're Alabama. So there's a chance, with their offense, with their quarterback play, that they just continue to not miss a beat because, they can access the portal that well.
Yeah. But this leads us to something you had from Josh Pate from the program, Leg Kicks Josh Pate, that had a graphic that you want to touch on tonight.
I did. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this?
Exactly. Yeah.
So the premise of this graphic from Josh Pate, obviously we know how great Nick Saban is, but he said Nick Saban has destroyed lives. And then this graphic titled Broken by Bama. And it mentioned the 31 coaches that have been fired or resigned since Nick Saban was hired at Alabama. And while it's a trivial like fact, it's cool. Like, wow, look at how many coaching changes there's been since Alabama's had one guy. Like it's an insane fact. But the idea that Alabama is the reason that 31 of these coaches, that Nick Saban is the reason that 31 of these coaches lost their job, it's just like, it's ridiculous. Like Joker Phillips at Kentucky, is Nick Saban the reason he got fired? You know what I mean? Like going through these 31 coaches, I found about, what did I come up with? I think about 4 that actually got fired because of Nick Saban? Do you care to take a stab at the 4 that you think got fired because of Nick Saban? Or I can just go ahead and tell you.
Because of Nick Saban.
Yes.
Let me think here. Because of Nick Saban.
I'm just going to hit you with it.
Kevin Sumlin?
He was a borderline one.
Okay.
But he's also going 8-5 every year. Like Kevin Sumlin, yeah, like it's not helping you with Alabama in the East every year. You got him one time, but if they're going 10-2 every year and losing to Alabama and one other game, like Kevin
Mark
Sumlin
Richt's
doesn't
definitely
lose
in
his
there.
shit. Mark Richt is 100% one of the coaches that got fired because of Nick Saban. He's got at least one or two more SEC titles probably without Nick Saban in there.
I'm gonna go
probably a national title.
It's probably true. Jim McElwain or Will Muschamp, one of those two?
No, I didn't think because McElwain really got fired because people didn't like him. And he lied about getting death threats, right? It made the Florida fan base look bad. AD's like, hold on. That? Yeah, he said he got death threats and everything was going so bad. And I think he said Jeremy Foley at the time. Yeah. He's just like, well, hold on. Who's been giving you death threats? We need to see this. He's like, don't worry about it. Yeah.
I don't have any memory
because Florida's like, yeah, you're making our fan base look like crazy people if we're going to send death threats to our head coach. We need to know about this. And so I think he was just like, I don't know, people were saying bad things. It's not important.
Well, I know like Brian Kelly left Notre Dame basically because he was like, I can't beat Bama with Notre Dame players, so I'm going to LSU.
That's a good one.
I think Brian Kelly I think he is staying at Notre Dame if Nick Saban is not the head coach at Alabama for this long. I think he's fine.
He's going right into the belly of the beast. It's a bold strategy. Maybe Lincoln Riley was afraid of going to the SEC too and jump ship to the Pac-12 or to, I guess, the Big Ten, USC.
Which is, again, like now looking back, a horrific move from him. Because look, I get the money and all of that, but like USC's never winning the Big Ten. Ever. They are never
winning.
USC in the cold, those SoCal games, like them playing in Michigan and at Penn State late in one of these seasons, like it's not going to happen. It's like the Miami Dolphins going into New England and Buffalo late. It's just this is not a thing.
That could be, but time
USC
will tell.
Wins
they're
exactly
going to recruit
0
well.
Big Tens.
Hey, there's some cold games up there in Oregon State and Washington. All right.
Yeah.
But the other ones that I think you could make the argument were fired or resigned, whatever, because of Nick Saban. Les Miles. Like,
interesting.
LSU's just churn along, probably wins a couple more national championships without Alabama and Nick Saban. Urban Meyer, hard to say.
I was going to say, but he resigned.
Yeah.
And he won. I can't throw Urban in that list. He wasn't scared of Saban.
But he did lose to Saban at Alabama in 2009 and then had the nervous breakdown or whatever after losing the SEC championship and then had the 2010, I don't know, something about the sustained success of Alabama. And Alabama didn't necessarily have a great 2010 season either. So that's a borderline one, even that one. So I'm giving them 4 and you're arguing with one of the 4. So we got 31 guys on this graphic. And then Tommy Tuberville. I think he's just a good, solid coach for years. And it's like Saban just comes in year 2, has built a powerhouse. I think Tuberville lasted to 2008. I want to say 2008 was because I think 2009, I think Chiswick's second year was when they won the national championship. But like guys like that, like Gene Chizik is on this list. And it's like, is Gene Chizik getting fired because of Nick Saban or because he went like 3-9 2 years after winning the national championship?
I mean, I just think it's less about the coaches for me that got fired because of Nick Saban. It's just more about like, he ruins so many fan bases' expectations. He ruins so many fan bases just like how they view reality and where their program is and what success is. And like, I mean, Notre Dame fans, Michigan fans, Ohio State fans, you go up and down the list, so many SEC fans where it's like, look.
Clemson, do they have 4 straight national championships or something? Like,
right.
Who knows?
And I think it's more about those fan bases and what he did to just and it's not his fault. And again, I'm not blaming Saban. Well, it is his fault, but I'm also not harping on the guy for being an excellent all-time best coach. Is that like parity went out the window with him? Like once he figured out Alabama, it's just parity is out the door. And we're going into this year, and I wrote about it where I'm like, Bama's just the best team, top to bottom. You go through everything, and you're like, they had a quote unquote down year, and I'm going through every advanced stat, and I'm going through everything, and I'm like, they're 1-2 in just about everything, and it was a down year in Saban's mind, and they just got better, and it's just they're just this inevitable part of the sport now that, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is like my Heisman favorite, and he just comes like, it's another guy. He's just like, I could have had a great career and been a first round pick at Tech. Like, Tech puts guys in the NFL. Like, he could have stayed. He was like, I'm just gonna go.
Do they though?
I mean, look, Tashard Choice.
Tashard Choice? What was that, like 15 years ago?
Roddy Jones, Jonathan Dwyer in the league.
We're going like a decade ago. It's been a while for Tech. The Demaryius Thomas and Calvin Johnson. We're talking like
offensive players.
12, like 15 years ago for those guys. It's been a while for Tech. But yeah, just going through this list, it's like, no, these guys like Jeremy Pruitt and Dan Mullen were probably more fired because of Kirby Smart or just their.
No, Jeremy Pruitt got fired because Jeremy Pruitt.
People disliked them as people.
He was just not a good head coach and had no business being a head SEC coach. He just wasn't a CEO. Like, that's the reason Jeremy Pruitt got fired. Is none of the Tennessee guys really got fired because of Saban.
Like Fulmer, it's like, it kind of overlaps with the end of Saban, but I mean, that's not the reason for Fulmer. It was, it's just people were tired of him. He kind of,
the recruiting was going down.
Yeah, it's like kind of a slow downward turn. But
it was kind of like the Bowden stuff, where you just saw the writing on the wall and you're like, this is ending. And
they kind of had to force out the legend. Like that's what happens sometimes. But yeah, there's Petrino and Hugh Freeze. Like, these guys aren't getting fired because of Nick Saban. They got their own thing going on.
Yeah, for sure. Did you see the list Dog Stats just put out, by the way?
No, I did not.
The most returning 70+ PFF grade players in 2022. Who would you guess is number one?
I don't know, maybe Alabama.
Georgia at 20.
Georgia Bulldogs.
Alabama's only returning 11 70+ ratings, PFF ratings.
I don't know. It's cool. It's cool to see Georgia at the top of a list.
That kind of, it surprises me because of just PFF Georgia losing so much. And we'll get into their lost production, but the fact that they still have that many guys returning. And true or false, Matt Green, Stetson Bennett will be 25 years old before the end of this college football season.
Yes, I saw that. 25.
You've got to be kidding me. Chris Winkie. I mean, we thought that was crazy, his age 30 season in here, but
I just love seeing the old pictures of him rocking number 22. It's like this starting quarterback. That's how low this guy was on the potential of being the starting quarterback at Georgia. He's number 22.
I feel like he's got to be like the same age as like Joe Cox. Like, those two are somehow the same age. Joe Tarasinski. It's like they're just they're somehow the same age because he's been in this program and just bounced around for this long. We're gonna start.
Got to be at least Fromm's age, maybe a year older than Fromm. Fromm's been out of Georgia. It's like the third year he's been gone.
Good question. Now I want to pull this up. Is he older than Jake Fromm? He is older than Jake Fromm.
Yeah, so
that's incredible.
It's been around a while.
He's out of football too, I think. I think it's over for him, the NFL. I read a piece on him.
I think Demetrius Robertson, like last year, was still in college when Mecole Hardman was in like his third year in the NFL. Like, it's kind of crazy.
That's the 5-star. If you go down the 5-star rabbit hole of like, what happened to that guy? He's one of those you got to go, wow, that really just did not work out. The Cal to Georgia, it just never worked out wherever.
But this is interesting. Like, what I think a lot of people forget about going into last year is Georgia lost a lot from the 2020 defense. Like, the 2020 defense was one of the top ranked defenses in the country. And, they lost Ojulari, like basically the entire secondary. I think they lost like 6 guys from the secondary with transfers, and like they had 4 cornerbacks that went pro or transferred. So like, actually, I think they had 4 that went pro, and then a 5th one, Tyreek Stevenson, went to Miami. So they lost so much from that 2020 defense. It's just, this is what happens when you stack elite recruiting class on top of elite recruiting class. I think this one's especially, it feels similar to the 2019 class that had Nakobe Dean and Trayvon Walker and those guys. that kind of just played situational roles, but just they would kind of be the third down squad. It seemed like the 5-star freshman would kind of come in there on third downs and just kind of use situationally. I have a feeling that that's kind of what this 2022 class is going to be. It's going to have some of those guys that can be used like kind of situationally, just young, like 5 stars.
My 4-team playoff came out this week as well. Did you see who I put in my 4 and national champion?
Oh, you made your prediction? Where is that? I did not see that.
Put it out in the piece. The college football playoff is boring. The conversation is boring piece that I wrote this week that you can go find at sportsrenaissanceman.substack.com. But my 4. Do you have your 4 ready?
I don't know how to feel. I feel like this should have been a segment. I feel like you're two-timing me over here.
I'm sorry. I wrote about it. I feel like you have your 4, right?
No, I do have my 4.
Okay, well, let's do that. My 4, Alabama 1, Ohio State 2, Texas A&M 3, Clemson 4. And then I have A&M beating Ohio State, and I have Alabama beating Clemson, and then Alabama beating A&M in the championship.
Alabama over A&M in the national championship. So I have as my 1 seed, I have Ohio State. And then I'm going to go Alabama 2, Utah, the 3 seed, and then Georgia, the 4 seed. And then I think I'm going to have Ohio State beating Georgia in the first round of the playoff, Alabama beating Utah, and then Ohio State beating Alabama national championship.
CJ Stroud just doesn't give me the championship quarterback buzz. Feels too much like a JT Barrett to me. I'm just not there with him. I need the Cardale Jones. I need the Justin Fields type. I need something more. He's not the dude for me.
Isn't he like a kind of a hybrid of all 3 of those guys?
No, man, he doesn't move in the pocket at all. Everything is just so clean, 70% completion percentage. He makes the right throw. He does exactly what he's supposed to do.
He seems like the perfect type, the prototype, though, in my opinion, that it can run, and he is very athletic when you see him take off, but he literally can affect a game without running at all.
Yeah, he's more of a pocket guy. Fields is okay moving around.
Fields seemed, like there's a lot more design runs for Justin Fields.
Well, he's also bigger. Like Fields is a big dude. Fields, he took a beating in that Clemson game, if you remember.
Yeah, he definitely did. But I'm very high on CJ Stroud coming to this year. Like I think you can make the case that he is better than Bryce Young, honestly. Like I think they're right there, 1A, 1B personally. I mean, and Ohio State just has the elite playmakers around him. Like Alabama's got elite playmakers, but Jahmyr Gibbs, as good as he is, like he's not what Alabama. He's not Najee Harris. He's not the typical just first round talent. Like he could be. He might be. A breakout. Like this might be his time. I think he'll have a very good season. Don't get me wrong. I think he'll have whatever similar production to Brian Robinson, just like a bell cow running back. But the receivers, like these receivers, are not the typical Jameson Williams, and just these first rounder after first rounder. Like this Ohio State team with Travion Henderson, with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Marvin Harrison Jr. Like I don't even know who the other guys they're going to have that are going to bust out. It just, this receiver group is just always elite. And I don't know. I think Ohio State is going to be improved defensively too. Like they're going to be tough to beat. Low-key tough schedule. They might not go undefeated. It is a low-key tough schedule, but I really like Ohio State this year.
I think when people, if people push back on the A&M thing, my thing with A&M, there's so, like, you go through the depth chart and like my preview and thinking about it, there's just so much talent now in this defense. There is so much talent. And Dita Durkin now in there at DC replacing Mike Elko. The defense was number 3 nationally in scoring defense, right behind Georgia and Clemson, number 2. Basically identical numbers to Clemson, number 2. But because the offense was so bad, and I was going through the numbers, and we'll get more into detail on the Aggies when we do our preview, but I think we're just going to be in this zone where the second best SEC West team has a really good path to making the college football playoff, because they're going to, we know the recruiting and we know just what they're going to be, whether it's Arkansas, Ole Miss, Auburn, whoever it is, the number 2 to Alabama, LSU very soon. if you lose to Bama, it might be the best thing for you to avoid Georgia in the SEC title game and have to beat Georgia. Now, the problem arises is if Bama's undefeated, lose to Georgia in this scenario, and then those two just both get in. However, it's an easier task to drop the Bama game this year, avoid Georgia in the SEC title game, and then that be your lone loss and go in 11-1. And you're just
A&M will need Georgia to be 11-1 though.
Correct. So they need some help if they don't go to the SEC title game. But I just, the offense will not be as bad. I just refuse to believe that Haynes King, a healthy Haynes King, will be what Zach Calzada, who might be number 3 at Auburn right now. So that leads us to that one. So we'll see if that ultimately.
Hold on, before we move on from the playoff, though, if that scenario happens, so Ohio State is 12-0, wins the Big Ten, they're number 1, or say they're 12-0 going into the Big Ten championship, they're number 1. Alabama or Georgia is 12-0 going to the SEC championship. Alabama is, say, 11-1, and Alabama beats Georgia, right? And they go to 12-1. And Utah is sitting here at 12-1, just won the Pac-12. Does Georgia go to number 3 or does Georgia go to number 4? Because I feel like it would just kind of be anticlimactic for our sport if we see Alabama number 3 knock off Georgia number 2, or maybe even Georgia number 1 if they're undefeated. Who knows? And then Georgia just goes to number 3 and Alabama's at 2, and then we just see them play again in the first round. Like, it seems like
we avoid this intentionally last year, where we made the case on the podcast, or it's like they should actually, based on the I don't remember
I don't think we could really make the case for Cincinnati ahead of Georgia, though.
I mean, they were undefeated.
Yeah, but I mean, their best win is Notre Dame. Like, who's there? Like, who else did they really?
Well, I guess the question would have been if Oklahoma State won, are they ahead of Georgia?
I mean, there could have been more talk about a 1-loss Big 12 champion.
Yeah.
And it's possible, but I think you could justify a team like Georgia, who was so dominant, like the whole season. Like, they were just basically.
But I guess my broader point is, like, you don't think that was a conversation in the college football playoff committee office where they were like, we can't put these two back to back. Like, we can't do this all over again.
I think it would have been a lot more interesting if like you're saying, if there was a 1-loss Notre Dame or Clemson was in the conversation or something, because it would have been hard to justify Georgia being a 1-loss behind one of those teams or something. But in this situation, I feel like if you can reasonably avoid the rematch in the first round, especially a rematch we just saw like the last game. Like, it's one thing if it was a A&M and Alabama, they played in week 8 or something, but even that you like avoid it if you can, right? Like, because we have seen this game already. We have such a limited number of games we get to see in college football to begin with. Like, let's try to avoid, if possible. Like, you can't manipulate it if it's just clear. If it's just clear who the best 3 teams are or something like that, or something, but if you could avoid it, I feel like it would just be better for the product if you see Georgia, Ohio State first round, and then Alabama, Utah.
The Utah stuff, man, can they beat Florida on the road first? And can we see a Pac-12 team back in the playoff?
I think they can do it, man. I think Clemson, I mean, obviously there's the Big 12. I don't see the Big 12 getting to the playoff this year.
What you're asking Utah to do is to sweep Oregon, USC, and Florida.
I mean,
and BYU.
We saw what they did to Oregon twice last year.
That's 3 straight is what I'm saying.
I like Florida. If they're ever going to get Florida in the swamp, like, this is the time.
I agree.
The first year of a new administration, a new regime,
where there are more coaches than players.
I saw that picture. So I really like Utah this year, and I even think 1-loss Utah Pac-12 champion. I mean, can they not be top 4?
I mean, they're not getting in over a 1-loss. If there are 2 1-loss SEC teams, that second SEC team's getting in over Utah.
And they could both get in, though. In my scenario, I could see both of them getting in. But a 1-loss Big 12 champion, I think, gets the nod, or a 1-loss ACC champion.
I think Pac-12 is the weakest one. I think they're going to get the least amount of cachet here.
I personally think the Big 12 and ACC champion, who I think is, I believe I said NC State and Oklahoma.
Yes, you did.
I think both of them will have more than one loss this season. So I think that's what's going to help Utah. Even if they do lose one game, I think they can still.
Well, that's what I should throw in. Is Clemson? I just feel like is sleepwalking into this. I just feel like Clemson's sleepwalking into the playoff. And
I don't know, man. It wasn't easy for them last year to get to that ACC schedule. Like Miami is a legit contender in the ACC.
Pitt
I think
is a contender for sure. Hopefully after week 2, we don't feel the same.
Don't count out my Wolfpack, man.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. Starting quarterbacks before we get into some week 0 preview action and our SEC preview as we wrap up our conference preview series. Matt Green, Quinn Ewers, QB1 at UTA, UT Austin. Emory Jones wins the job at Arizona State. Michael Penix Jr. wins the job for year 1 for Kalen DeBoer at UW. Dylan Morris and I think Sam Heward, son of I think he's a nephew of Brock Heward, the NFL analyst. I don't think it's his son. I think that's his uncle.
I think you're right.
But highly touted kid. I think he was a 5-star kid.
Brock Heward, quality ESPN personality.
He's good. Brock Heward's good. Charlie Brewer winning the Liberty job for his 19th year in college. In the third FBS school he will be starting a college football game for. Shout out to JT Daniels, also pulling that off by getting the job at West Virginia. And then TJ Finley.
That would be an interesting list to come up with right there. Not to cut you off, but guys to start quarterback at 3 different schools, there can't be that many of those.
We're going to see 4 now. If the transfer portal waiver stuff goes away and you can just do 1 a year, like just you bounce around 1 at a time.
Yeah, just go to the next best situation.
Mm-hmm. But also Auburn. That was the last thing. Zach Calzada might be number 3, with TJ Finley being the week 1 starter at Auburn. So,
which I think has to be a great thing. It has to be the best news to come out of Auburn camp is that Calzada might be the 3rd best quarterback, because no disrespect to the Sugar Hill native, but I do not think Calzada is good at all. So if he was going to be the starter at Auburn, I think there was a little something to worry about. I feel like TJ Finley showed last year like that he's a capable quarterback. Like he has some potential. I think TJ Finley could be real solid. I don't think he's suspended or anything, right? He just got that. He's not, right?
I don't think so, no.
Yeah, so I think this has got to be TJ Finley's job, personally.
Which of those names who won the job, which are you most excited about watching, though?
It's hard to be too high on Penix or Emory Jones. We've kind of seen what they've done. Like they could both elevate, the programs they've gone to, but Quinn Ewers has to be the answer, just because like I don't know how high I am on Quinn Ewers, like obviously I'm not any kind of recruiting expert or anything, but we've seen his rating. We've seen all that. He just sat out the entire year of Ohio State. I just want to see him. I want to see what this guy's all about. Is he going to live up to the hype? And so you heard a lot about Hudson Card, like might be leading the competition. I don't know, what was that, a smoke screen or what? Did
the boosters get involved? The NIL collective, where they're like, no, this is not happening. I don't care if he's
paying this guy however much a year. You're going to start him. Maybe, maybe a little GM, little NFL, what NFL coaches have to deal with. But so Quinn Ewers is definitely the guy. Like, I mean, if he just comes in and he's just, taking college football by storm, like this college football season all of a sudden gets very interesting if Texas truly is back. We've heard proclamations, declarations in the past of Texas being back, but I'm really excited to see actually what Quinn Ewers has to offer. Wish he would cut his hair, but I'm an old geezer at this point. What do I know about fashion?
Ewers versus Bryce Young, week 2. That'll be fun.
Yeah, man, it definitely should be. I still haven't heard anything about Oregon starting quarterback. I kind of assume Bo Nix, but Ty Thompson, it easily could be. So if it's Bo Nix, it feels like kind of going up against Georgia, kind of doing the same thing and expecting different results. Like I don't imagine it going differently if it's Bo Nix playing Georgia. But if it's Ty Thompson, who knows? Maybe he gives Georgia a different look. So Dan Lanning probably doesn't want to show his hand, give Georgia any benefit there.
Yeah, for sure. They probably want just their guy, that linebacker, former 5-star guy who's played like 4 games total in his career. Flo, is it Josh Flo?
Justin Flo.
Justin Flo, yeah. So he's healthy right now, and that can matter in the Georgia game. Like if they have Flo and what's the other
Noah
linebacker?
Sewell.
Yeah, that's potential 2 first-round talent linebackers in that game, and they need everybody possible for that Georgia game in the opener. That one, I'm leaning more and more towards that game not being a blowout and being closer than people think.
It could be. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by that one. Georgia's going to win, but I just think it'll be a little bit closer. I'm hedging a week out. I might be taking the Oregon cover there is where I'm leaning on that one. Speaking of cover,
don't want to spoil our picks for next week.
And I want room to change my mind over the next couple of days, Matt Green. Week 0 action is here. Matt Green, we have a lot of games on the docket. Tennessee's not one of them. I mean, Florida State, look, you get DeQuincy in the building. Tallahassee's losing it. They're excited. Jordan Travis back under center. They're ready to get the Dukes in there. I don't know if they're the Dukes. I heard that on College Football Uncensored this week, and I didn't double check to see if DeQuincy is the Dukes, but we'll see.
Who are you talking about?
DeQuincy? DeQuincy?
Florida State's playing?
Yeah.
Duquesne,
yeah.
I do not know their mascot, but
is it really pronounced Duquesne?
Yeah.
How is it spelled?
You've never heard of Duquesne before?
No.
I've seen him in basketball. I want to say Mike James. Is that that point guard that played for a while? I think he went to Duquesne.
Mike James?
Mike James is his name, right?
I mean, he was a
bald point guard that was around for the Heat, was around for a while. I want to say he went to Duquesne. But they are Duquesne University Dukes. That is correct about the mascot.
Well, it's also Duquesne University of the Holy Spirit, folks.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe it. Is that right? Is it in Pittsburgh? Yeah.
Yes. One of the nation's top Catholic universities.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. But that's who the Knowles
Kesney over here. What is this guy?
I've never seen it before.
I expect better from you.
Hold on. I've never heard that word out loud. It's a word I've seen a billion times. We all have those words where you've seen them and you've never heard it out loud. So you're just like, I have no idea how to actually pronounce this. And you're just going with it when you're reading books and coming across new words. If you don't take the time to pull out the old dictionary.com app and press the what does this sound like out loud, then you might be taking a risk there a little bit.
There you go. Mike James was a Duquesne alumni, by the way.
There you go. See, I redeemed myself there. Well, Matt Green, we're not going to talk about and preview the Florida State game. They should win. This is not Jacksonville State coming in there, so they should be just fine at home there. I think I was actually in attendance for a Jacksonville State, Florida State game when my cousin was there over a decade ago now, where I think that was the Ryan Perilou Jacksonville State team. I think Perilou was on the Gamecocks at that point. Yeah.
Former LSU great Ryan Perilou.
Another former 5-star. Did not work out. All the talent in the world just did not come together for him. Week 0, though. I have 3 games as we shake the rust off of our betting preview, Matt Green. I think the 3 of it, we're going in blind here. I mean, you got the Dublin game, which I'm very excited to watch because it was supposed to happen in the COVID year, right? Like, was canceled? There was some sort of Dublin. Right? It wasn't these 2, but there was a overseas game. I feel like that was supposed to be played overseas, and then 2020 wiped that out. I don't remember who it was, but there was supposed to be somebody a couple years ago in 2020, and I don't remember who it was exactly. But we get Nebraska, Northwestern. I'm excited for this one. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, Matt Green. We've got Wyoming versus Illinois. Excited for that one. Big Craig Bowl guy over here. Cowboy action. Like, I'm excited for that one. I think that's going to be a physical game. Craig Bowl and
DeVito time.
I mean, hey, when you get Brett Bielema and Craig Bowl in that pregame handshake, the intensity between the two of them and just like the serious football guys, the big football dude, it's going to be a pretty intense pregame handshake. So I keep an eye on that. And then the nightcap that I'm very excited about. You know how I feel about the Rainbow Warriors. You know how I feel about Hawaii football. Timmy Chang is back in the building in Honolulu. We get the Timmy Chang first game of his college football head coaching career, coming over from Colorado State. I don't even think he's been a coordinator to this point, but he gets the job. We thought it was gonna be June Jones, a crazy situation with Todd Graham, a mass like exodus. So they lost like over 50 players to the portal. So they lost all kinds of dudes. Vanderbilt, when they're over under the season, I think it's 2.5. They got to get this one on the road to kick things off in Hawaii. They start things off with a vacation of sorts to get things going here. But Matt Green, the three big ones, what are you most intrigued by here?
Definitely the Dublin game. I think we all want to see Nebraska. I think they're the only team that's playing on that opening weekend that you're really wondering what they could be this year. Like Florida State, no one cares about that Duquesne game, right? Like that's North Carolina. They play the Rattlers.
Oh,
you know,
I like that you said that. Love the Rattlers coach. Florida A&M's good. They were recruited pretty well. They're going to cover. Just go ahead and write that in. That's another new quarterback in the building. Drake Mays won that job this past week at UNC. They said their two quarterbacks are going to play. Go ahead and pencil in the Rattlers covering on that one, folks. That is one you can hold me to next week.
In. What's the spread looking like?
Doesn't matter. Pencil it in.
I don't even see an available spread here on the scoreboard. All right, pencil it in, whatever it is.
That's what I'm here for. So, do you have the three spreads for the games in question, Matt Green?
Yeah, so we got Nebraska is what does that say? 13-point favorite in this one over Northwestern. And it's just, I do like Nebraska in this one. I think Casey Thompson's going to make this offense more explosive this year. But I don't know. I still need to see it. I think Northwestern just has a way of making teams get down in the mud with them, you know? And it's like, this is going to be 16-9 or something. And I think Nebraska. And there seems like there's something with the NFL games in those Europe, made a long grass or something. A lot of these English field pitches, if you will. Obviously, this is Dublin, this is Ireland, but same concept. So I feel like there's always less offenses in those NFL games that are in England. Am I onto something there? You're a bigger NFL guy than me. It seems like those are always ugly games, right?
They're ugly, but it's also just more of like there's more upset potential there. Like you don't really know how the traveling is going to go. How like if the Jags are basically the London team now, and it's like a home game for the Jags. So there's some weird stuff there, but I don't know. I think it's also different for professional athletes and college kids. Like this is a totally different thing to keep these college kids and their heads locked in on game week when you're in Dublin. Like these are 18, 19-year-old kids who are going to be distracted, I think, by the sights and sounds of Dublin, Ireland. But I am right there with you where this is not the team you want to play in Dublin if you're Scott Frost. Like the team, like the weather's not great. The defense is going to be there. Say what you will about Pat Fitzgerald and where they're at as a program. The defense is going to be good. Like I don't see a scenario where the defense is not one of the best in the Big Ten next year. I don't know. This feels like an upset to me. I'm going Cats here. And I've also kind of maybe part of this is just the Nebraska. Like I was reading the report of like how much they're emphasizing because they finally got a special teams coach this year, which is something they did not have before this year in Lincoln under Scott Frost. Everything about it, the throwing up stuff this past week that I sent you of like never seen like all the different offensive linemen that have been puking in practice. And you're like, none of this sounds good. All of this sounds like a coach who's getting fired this year. And I think they lose here. I am all in on the Adrian Martinez stuff and the redemption tour. And with that, the yin, the yang, for Adrian Martinez to rise. Nebraska in the Scott Frost era must fall. So give me the
Is that right?
Wildcats
They
in
can't just
an
both.
upset.
They can't just both have better seasons. Just
They can't. Sorry.
Fair enough. So you're
Where are you
going
going?
Northwestern outright. So
Yeah.
I'm going Nebraska to get the win, but I don't think they're going to cover.
Okay.
What was it? 13, right? Okay. And then Wyoming and Illinois. The Illini are 11-point favorites in this one. And it's hard to speaking of bad offenses, like Illinois was just an awful offense last year. But I feel like year two, I feel about guys in year two. I feel like year two of Bielema, new offensive coordinator from UTSA. I think Illinois is going to be better this year. And Wyoming, yeah, they were solid in the what conference are they in? Mountain West. They were solid last year in the Mountain West, but I think Illinois wins this, and I'm gonna take Illinois and the points.
Can you remember Wyoming upsetting into Power 5 school anytime in the last decade?
No, not off the top of my head.
Right? I don't have any recollection. Even the Josh Allen years, they never upset anyone major that I recall. I feel like maybe Iowa. I feel like there was a.
It's funny you say that. Iowa was the first team that came to my head. I wonder that may have happened. Iowa's been beaten a couple times, by I think North Dakota State may have beaten Iowa one year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's interesting that was the first one you thought of, because once you said that, Iowa was the first team
I don't
that came
remember.
to my mind. But
email us, chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. But I don't recall the exact team that I feel like they've done it once, and I don't remember who it was, but Iowa jumped out to me first. I'm going to say Illinois wins this and covers. I think Illinois is going to be better this year. I think the offense is going to be a little bit better. Still think it's a rough season overall once they get into Big Ten play, but Wyoming on the road early. Illinois doesn't lose first games of the season very often. I looked that up. FanDuel had Illinois has won 10 of their last 11 opening games, and you just think about Wyoming, and I don't know, they have not pulled it off. A lot of Power 5 victories. Solid program. Craig Bowl doing a great job over there in Cowboy country, but give me the Fighting Illini to win and cover.
All right. So I'm not able to necessarily answer this question, but Wyoming has played Iowa 3 times, and they are 0-3 all time versus the Hawkeyes. So it was not Iowa. I'm not sure who it was. I was kind of looking through some, but I'm not sure who it was that they crapped up and beat. But it was not the Hawkeyes.
I need to know.
And then our last one, we got Hawaii and Vandy. The Commodores, 8-point road favorite. I just feel like Hawaii, it's cool that Timmy Chang's back and everything. Maybe they can get back on track as a program. But with, like you were talking about, everything that's going on off the field, just the mass exodus off this team and everything. I don't like Vanderbilt very much, but I like Vanderbilt to win this one.
Oh my God, I realized who it was. Wyoming beat Tennessee in 2008. I forgot about this. Okay. Oh my God. They beat Tennessee in 2008. They were 26-point dogs and beat Tennessee 13-7 in 2008.
Oh wait, so was it Nick Saban that got Phil Fulmer fired, or was it losing to Wyoming at home? Wyoming. I think that hurt a little bit more.
There you go. They also beat Boise in 2016, where Boise was number 13, and that was the Josh Allen year where he beat Brett Rippon in a 38-28 big one. So that was a big one.
Tell me why Wyoming and Tennessee played in Nashville in 2002.
That I have no idea.
This grinds my gears.
Yeah. That I cannot answer for you, sir. So last one. Who did you have? What is the spread for Hawaii Vanderbilt?
Oh yeah, so this is a 8-point. Vanderbilt's an 8-point favorite, and
that's it.
I'm gonna go Vanderbilt because everything going on with this Hawaii program. Like I said, give me the Commodores.
That's wild. It's only 8. I guess just being on the road.
Vanderbilt.
I mean, you should be blowing this team out, man. Like,
also, Hawaii is the only acceptable non-Power 5 road game to play. Like, and I'll give you, someone's playing BYU this year. Is it Arkansas playing at BYU? That's not a terrible one, but they're about to be a Power 5, so it
wait, is Arkansas playing at BYU?
Yeah, I think they're at BYU this year. But there's another one. We'll get to it when we get there. It's real ACC type stuff. ACC loves just playing road games at Charlotte and Old Dominion and all these lesser than teams. You don't give up a home game for Old Dominion.
Okay.
Grinds my gears.
I'm going to go Vanderbilt to win and cover. But I will say I'm interested to see who Hawaii throws out there. They have a couple different options. Like it might be Cammon Cooper. He spells his name Cammon Cooper, Washington State transfer. He committed to Jay Graham. There's something to watch here. Strong Hendon Hooker vibes here. Transfers in January, I think, and kind of like that Hendon Hooker where he committed to Jeremy Pruitt and that staff and kind of stuck with it after the fact. And after the mass exodus, hung around, didn't have the starting job. It looks like it's going to be Braden Schrager, who has been with the program. I think he was, I want to say he was the backup last year, but I could be wrong. But we'll see. Run and gun, Hawaii, late at night, Timmy Chang. Things are good. Hawaii's running the right offense. Seems like the vibes are better, but it's going to be a long, painful rebuild in Aloha country. So give me Mike Wright and the Fighting Commodores to win and cover. And if they lose this one, the under is just guaranteed. You cannot blow this one if you're Vandy.
Yeah, 2.5. They're gonna need this one.
Mm-hmm. All right, Matt Green. Well, I am ready to get into our last conference preview. We've got the SEC, my friend.
All right, so we're gonna start in the SEC East. We're gonna do it alphabetically as we do, and we're gonna start with the Florida Gators. Over under is 7.5 on Florida.
I've got the under here.
So, how many games do you see them winning?
7. I think 7 and 5 is where they end up.
So, I think I have them starting 1-3. I think they could easily start 1-3. They could win Utah and Kentucky too. But I think
that's a tall order, man.
Yeah, I tend to think they're going to be more 6 games. Like I'm putting them at 6 wins, and that's counting LSU as a win. And I think LSU that's a questionable one right there. So they're going to have a lot of toss-up games. I feel like we'll get to LSU in a second. I kind of feel it's similar about LSU and Florida this year, that just half of their schedule is kind of toss-up games. Like South Carolina, they could win, they could lose. Kentucky, they could win, they could lose. It's gonna, and I'm counting Florida State too. Like I think that's a team that we all expect
on the road this
better.
year,
and it's like that's bold too. So yeah, I think we're both feeling the under. And I think Anthony Richardson being just an absolute star, I think is the only thing that puts them ahead of above 7.5 wins. I think they're gonna need him to be a superstar for that to happen. And I don't necessarily see that. And yeah, we'll both go under there.
I don't know, when you look at this schedule for me, you look at I just had it in front of me. Where'd it go? Oh, there it is. So Utah, Kentucky. What I think they do is they split there. They beat South Florida. They lose to Tennessee. So 2-2. Beat Eastern Washington 3-2. Beat Mizzou at home 4-2. I think they lose to LSU at home 4-3. I think they lose to Georgia 4-4. Lose at A&M 4-5. Beat South Carolina 5-5. Beat Vandy and then beat Florida State, but I think that's toss-up. I think they have to really try. They have to really hone in later on in the season to get that 7-5. I think it's 6-6 is on the table for me. I would not be surprised if the Gators are 6-6 in year one.
Yeah, 7-5 seems like best case scenario of this year.
But I don't know. What do you think is the most interesting part of them? Like, what is it? Anthony Richardson? Is it like a coordinator hire? Like, I don't know. What? They're just so boring this year. Like Florida to me, I don't think Anthony Richardson's going to be a Heisman type. I don't see it.
I don't see the Anthony Richardson, and I think the recruiting is what Dan Mullen's been criticized, was what he was always criticized so much for. So it's not like the cupboard's necessarily bare. They're still Florida, but they don't have that talent that's going to take to truly compete. And I don't feel like they even have like LSU's talent, that I don't feel like it's going to be as quick of a turnaround. Like I don't know. And Napier is a guy that it's hard to know exactly what you're getting. Like with Heupel, a guy who's his first year in a Power 5 conference, I feel like you had a lot more of a clear idea on what you're getting out of Heupel. And Napier, it remains to be seen. And Anthony Richardson, we've seen the talent, but we've also seen a lot of bad plays too. So
I just think it's going to be a run-first team. Like Montrell Johnson coming over from Louisiana, following Napier. They're just going to run the ball a bunch. I don't think the pass game's going to be great. Like Justin Shorter has to be a star. Like he has to finally come through. And if he doesn't, I don't see the Gators offense doing enough. I think they're going to be some real problems.
And I'm blanking on the transfer receiver they have coming in from Arizona State. He needs to be one of their top options too. So we'll see.
Ricky Pearsall.
There you go.
Yeah.
You got your Phil Steele Bible handy, I see.
Yeah, I looked at it. I got
there you go.
Yeah. But I will say too, what's interesting? Who do you think is the all-time passing leader in Gator history?
I would have to say Danny Werfel.
Number 2.
Chris Leak.
Chris Leak, number 1 all-time.
Yeah, because I think Chris Leak's like 3rd or 4th in SEC history in passing yards.
Dude was there forever. Another guy that was at Florida seemingly forever. Number 3, Shane Matthews, though. And Emmitt Smith, not number 1 all-time rushing for them.
Is it? It's not Tim Tebow, is it?
No, I don't think you're gonna get it.
Eric Rhett.
Yeah, it's Eric Rhett.
Oh, don't knock my '90s Florida knowledge, sir.
There you go. I just wouldn't have guessed that because it was the run and shoot, and it was just the prolific offense and pass. Chris Doering and friends.
I didn't even think of Fred Taylor. I probably would have said Fred Taylor if I would have thought of them.
Okay.
I was a big Fred Taylor guy. Jacksonville, the black visor. Oh yeah, Fred Taylor.
Don't let a lot of Georgia fans hear that, Matt Green.
Hey, Fred Taylor, I respect the game. The Jaguars I loved when Jacksonville first came along. They just they really killed their uniforms, or they killed it with their uniforms just right out of the gate. And then I don't know why they started messing with it in the last decade. They don't know what they're doing.
Brands just get antsy, and teams are like, we have to do it because this is what we've been forever.
They were just like the Panthers. The Panthers and the Jaguars came in the league together. They killed it.
Panthers are still pretty clean.
Uniforms. Yeah, they didn't need to change them, and I'm glad the Panthers have held on to them. Texans too. Like they just came right in, nailed it the first time.
There you go. Where are we going next?
Uniform talk for the. So
well, let's not conclude it. I
maybe I won't make any promises. Next, we got the Georgia Bulldogs at 11.5, sir. So what are you thinking with the Dogs? They're gonna have a second straight regular undefeated regular season?
I don't. I think I'm going under. I think it's 11-1. I think 11-1 is where I'm at with them. I think not to go full Chris Doering here with the 11-1 Kentucky Wildcats, but I think the one loss for Georgia is Tennessee. I feel it in my bones is that Tennessee is going to beat Georgia, and they are going to lose a game in Columbia where I am losing my absolute mind and attendance in November to the Gamecocks in the dumbest game possible, and not following through on finally getting over the Florida and Georgia hump by losing the dumbest game possible late in the season to another inferior SEC East school. So 11-1 feels about right to me for the Dogs.
See, I tend to think if that was on the road, I think I've said that a few times. If that was on the road, I would feel a lot worse about that game. And it's interesting positioned where it is right behind Florida. I don't think Georgia's ever played Florida, Tennessee back to back. It's a very new scheduling situation there. But I think the best opportunities for Georgia to lose is either at South Carolina week 3 or I tend to think they make it to November undefeated.
Well, hold on. How is this going to affect your wedding vibes if they do go down?
South Carolina? That'd be a real buzzkill. Might not even show up for that. I might just turn around and go home.
Well, that's like half my family, like a bunch of people, like the vibe in the
Oh
Chase
man,
Thomas
sure, you
podcast
got to be
wedding.
rooting
Yeah,
for Georgia that day.
you're telling me.
So yeah, but South Carolina is still like that's wanting South Carolina to take a big step in year 2 if we're talking about beating Georgia. Although, did you see the light show that got leaked? The Williams Brice, the sandstorm.
Is it
Oh
cool?
man, I got juiced for it. A lot of people, sandstorm has a lot of love or hate vibes. I feel like
Anyone who hates that is just out of their mind. Like, we pick on South Carolina, but they nail it with their home atmosphere
I'm
and
saying,
everything.
like, I would never listen to a rave music like that any other time, but
Yeah.
it gets you going. I'm a big fan of the sandstorm, and
I
they had
was
the
freezing my
new.
ass off at the Tennessee Georgia game where Georgia fans just took over in that fourth quarter. That people forget that Georgia fans just overtook Neyland Stadium as every Tennessee fan left, as seen by the black coats and black
It's true. Colors
attire.
don't lie.
Yeah,
But yeah, they have the new light show and everything like everyone's getting. So it was a pretty cool little video that got leaked online. So you should check it out. But
I mean, doesn't Georgia do
that's going
that
to be
too?
a
Like,
new.
everybody does the light show now.
Yeah, everyone's got it, but they also had it going with the
They actually have a
sandstorm.
song.
Yeah, it
Though.
was
They have like a guaranteed song with it that makes it even better. Yeah.
exactly. But that's going to be a noon game at Georgia, so you can't utilize it, you know. But it's going
Yeah.
to be 100 degrees, I'm sure. So yeah, I think Georgia gets to November undefeated, and then you got Tennessee at Mississippi State, at Kentucky, and then Georgia Tech. I think those
Mississippi State's
Tennessee,
the only other one, right?
State,
Like,
I think those
Mississippi
are
State.
exactly. I think those are the toughest games. The cowbell, you know,
They
just
played
Mississippi
y'all
State.
tough.
Exactly. Mississippi State's gonna get someone. You know, there's a few teams that go to Starkville this year that are gonna be maybe top 10 or so. And I think Mississippi State's gonna get somebody, but I think Georgia's gonna be much better offensively this year than they were, or maybe not much better, but I should say just even better. Like, they're just gonna be like a crisper offense. Like, I think we're kind of downplaying that Stetson Bennett has never been going through the offseason, as through the spring, through the summer, as the number one guy. And there's a lot of first team reps that he's never gotten as the established starter on the team. And I think that should help him a lot in his second full season as the starter under Todd Monken. I think we've talked about the tight end room is just absolutely loaded. I think the receiving group, it might not be filled with those top tier first round George Pickens types, but it's just a lot of good receivers. So I feel like it's 4 or 5 deep and just good receivers. And then that tight end room, you're talking about, you know, maybe 2 or 3 first round picks in that tight end room. Like, those guys, if they reach their potential, I think the offensive line should be even better. And then the defense, it just, under Kirby Smart, under Will Muschamp, Glenn Schumann, it's hard to see this defense being anything other than really good. So if they're just as good at offensively as they were a year ago, maybe even a little better, I think there's a chance they're like not quite as good of a team as they were last year, but there's still no one on the schedule that necessarily scares you enough. I think it is a favorable schedule, and so I'm going to go over. I'm going to take Georgia going undefeated regular season for the second straight year.
My 2 biggest questions with Georgia. Number 1, you talk about the offense. One of the things that Georgia fans get antsy about this, you bring this up. We have not seen them play from behind all that much, where that's something I want to see, is Georgia and Stetson Bennett have to play from behind. Because one of the things about Stetson Bennett that a lot of folks miss is that he's not a game manager. The man's a gunslinger. And
that's true.
Like, what happens if they're down 17-7 at the half against Oregon, and Oregon's healthy defensively and they're good, and Dan Lanning, just knowing Stetson Bennett really, really well, just causes all kinds of havoc for him in the opener. Like, I want to see what this Georgia team looks like when they can't run the ball down your throats and just run like they're up 30-0 before you know it. Like, I want to see when they have to rely on Stetson to do stuff with Ladd McConkey and not just focus on the tight ends and just be able to play that big set that they're going to want to play a lot. Like, I'm curious to see what Georgia's offense looks like when they're playing from behind, because they have not been challenged all that much in the Stetson Bennett time of him under center. So when we talk about Stetson and how great he was last year, he really was never behind. Like, he stepped up in the national title game, and that was huge. But I would like to see a little bit more because it was such a rare thing, and Tennessee and Georgia's numbers offensively are nearly identical across the board when you look through them. Tennessee had to play from behind, or Hendon Hooker had to play from a position where it's like the defense is not getting a stop here. So I have to keep coming back out and I have to keep scoring, and this is just how it goes. Georgia's not in that spot, and I don't think with their loss of production on defense, it's going to be a big thing. But speaking of loss of production, my second thing about them is they are 12th in returning production in the SEC next year. So doesn't mean the sky is falling. It just means that they're going to have a lot of new faces. It means a lot of extremely talented players will be stepping in, and it's a new co-DCs. We don't know what Will Muschamp and what Glenn Schulman, is it
Schumann, yeah.
Schumann, yeah. Are going to be like as co-DCs. Does that work seamlessly? Is that just like they pick up right where Dan Lanning left off? We'll see. Those are things I'm very, very curious about. And if I think those are fair, right? Those are fair questions for Georgia. Is like what Stetson Bennett and this offense looks like if they have to play from behind and really have to struggle where the defense isn't 100%. The defense isn't overwhelming, and they're in a shootout against Tennessee this year where the first quarter adjustments don't hang on. It's like, no, you're going to be in this game with them until the fourth quarter, and Stetson's going to have to go throw for throw and can't do the Will Levis pick that cost Kentucky basically against Tennessee, where Kentucky was going back and forth in Tennessee at home. Will Levis had a pick six to Alontae Taylor, and that kind of put Tennessee up 2 scores, and it was just really, really tough for Kentucky to come back. But I wonder what happens there. It's not going to happen often. It might happen only once in the regular season, but I think it will be interesting to see if that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to know until you know, right? So the fact that you didn't see it much from Georgia last year, it's like it's hard to think you're going to see it much this year because I think the offensive line should be much improved this year. I think Tate Ratledge is a guy who got hurt like the third play of the game, I think, versus Clemson, missed the entire season. He's also had another injury that in this fall camp. So he's a guy that I think it should have been a starter at guard all year last year. And then Broderick Jones slid in the national championship at left tackle. And I think that's a guy who's a future first rounder personally. I think Broderick Jones is an elite talent. And I think the running game, there's kind of this perception of Georgia of what they were that, oh, they just run the ball and they don't really, the passing game is just kind of secondary. But in the first half of games, when the game is in the balance, I think Graham Coffey had a great stat showing this. Georgia's passing offense was basically equivalent to Ohio State and CJ Stroud, in the first half of games. And it was better than the Oklahomas of the world. It was better than a lot of other teams in the country last year. But then they just got up on teams and and coasted. So as good as the offense was, I feel like it could have been even better if they actually were in close games and they weren't just had things wrapped up halfway through the third quarter. But also, Zamir White he's not DeAndre Swift, right? He's not Sony Michel or Todd Gurley. He's not any of these stud running backs. James Cook was a good change of pace weapon. These guys weren't necessarily the elite, Georgia running backs that they've had typically. I think Kendall Milton, he might have some of that 5-star potential. Kenny McIntosh, I think he has more of that DeAndre Swift game breaker potential than a Zamir White had. So this offense, with Nick Chubb and Sony Michel, those two guys combined for I think 2,400 yards in 2017 when Georgia won the national championship. James Cook and Zamir White combined for 1,500 yards last year. It was not a dominant run game or anything. So I think the Georgia passing offense, I don't think necessarily gets enough credit. And even if it is not the receivers, it's just the tight ends, Brock Bowers couldn't be stopped last year. So if Eric Gilbert, if he's what he was supposed to be coming out of high school, it's hard. I would definitely see Georgia's top 2 receiving leaders being their top 2 tight ends. So I think they're loaded with playmakers. And I tend to just, give Kirby the benefit of the doubt that the defense is going to be good. As much as they did lose, they still bring back Jalen Carter, who was arguably the best defensive lineman on the team last year. The guy just wreaks havoc. And while they might not be as deep on the defensive line, having the one guy that's maybe the best defensive lineman in the entire country, I think could kind of equalize that. And then you also got Nolan Smith, Keely Ringo, Chris Smith, a couple returning starters. So as much as I think Georgia might take a step back, I don't know if there's anyone that can necessarily expose them on their schedule. Like I think that's why South Carolina early, like the third game, that feels more dangerous than Mississippi State late.
That's interesting. I feel like Mississippi State's more dangerous for them. And we'll get into Mississippi State. I'm just pretty high on them, and I'm a lot higher on Mississippi State than South Carolina. And I also just saw South Carolina give them hell. Mississippi State give Georgia a lot of hell when Will Rogers was a virtual unknown at that point a couple years back. So I don't know. It's a different kind of style. It kind of reminds me of the what always plagues Saban, right? Is the Hugh Freeze types. The Gus Malzahn offenses are the ones that get them. And I think Kirby, like getting got by a Mike Leach offense, would not be the most surprising thing in the world. Where like Kentucky tries to beat Georgia playing Georgia football, and you're like, oh, you're just going to get your ass kicked. This is never going to work. They're just a matchup problem. But you go at them where you're like Mississippi State, and where our run plays are 2-yard screens out wide. Like, we're never going up the middle against you. We're not going up against Jalen Carter and company.
And I think that's part of it. Why Kentucky just doesn't really scare Georgia fans. It's like, okay, yeah, the people that are predicting Kentucky, it's like, yeah, they're a 9-10 potential 10-win team, and it's on the road at Kentucky. Yeah, it fits the formula for an upset, but it's like, they're not gonna beat Georgia. Like, they're not gonna out Georgia. Whereas Tennessee, they're an actual dangerous opponent. But I think Tennessee was that game last year that, okay, if we got to score a little bit, someone's gonna punch us in the mouth. You got to punch him back. I think that was a really like a character building game for Georgia last year. Like, Tennessee just drove right down the field on that first possession, and for Georgia to just respond the way they did, and then I don't know what that James Cook touchdown pass, that made it like a 14-point game at halftime, I think. It was like a game that went back and forth, and you know what I'm talking about?
I think that only went up. You only went up 7 on that one. I think that was earlier than you think. The James Cook swing pass, or maybe that was a run. Was that a run that he had? That was the big.
He had the long run. Was the first touchdown.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, I don't remember.
But that one in the corner, that long touchdown pass, that was like right before halftime.
Yes,
and so I think that was one of my favorite plays of the year, honestly, because it was really like Georgia got tested in that first half, and they're up like 2 touchdowns, right? Like it kind of spoke to how good of a team Georgia was. They were able to kind of take that Tennessee's best shot on the road, a hostile environment, and all that. So
banners live forever. 17 points on Georgia.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the odds aren't likely to go undefeated 2 straight years, but I think the Dogs can get it done.
All right, we disagree. Where are we going next?
You're going under. Kentucky 8.5. The Wildcats. So looking at their schedule, I'll get into this a little bit. I think we're going to have a lot of ranked teams in the SEC in like the first 6-7 weeks of the year. I think I'm seeing a lot of good starts from teams.
And then they're just going to beat each other up. Yeah.
And then they are. There's some teams that are going to lose a lot of games in a row, I think. I'm afraid. So I think Kentucky is going to start 4-0. Florida is really the only question there. It's a bunch of out-of-conference games. All due respect to the Red Hawks of Miami, Ohio. And then I think Ole Miss, is where Kentucky gets their first loss personally on the road. Just because I just don't see Kentucky as that team that wins every game they should. I think they're going to be a better team than Ole Miss this year, but on the road is a little different. And then I think they can win South Carolina, Mississippi State at home, and I also have them losing at Tennessee and then losing to Georgia. But they've absolutely dominated Louisville 3 years in a row. So I think Louisville is an easy win for them. But I see Kentucky going 9-3 this year.
I think Malik Cunningham is a better college quarterback than Will Levis.
I don't know. That's possible because in college the running aspect is so valuable. But
he has Heisman potential. Like Malik Cunningham, I'm high on the Cardinals. I talked about this. Tion Evans is now in the building. My dude, Baby Kamara, is in the backfield with him this year. Louisville, I'm pretty high on. I think that's going to be a game this fall. And I feel a lot better if it was at Louisville. But I look at the schedule. I see 8-4, Matt Green. I see them starting
You
off
giving them the
3-1.
Louisville loss?
I have them losing to Florida. I think they lose on the road to Florida. I think they beat Ole Miss. I actually think, like, with our Georgia stuff, where it's like you can't match up like that, but like I think they can match up against Ole Miss in the road and just punch them in the mouth and actually really control that one on the road. So I'm going to give them that one. And I think that defense will give Jackson Dart and company problems. Give me Kentucky there. So that's 4-1. They beat South Carolina 5-1. Beat Mississippi State 6-1. Lose at
So we
UT.
both got them. Yeah, we both got them 7-2 to that point.
And then where I've got the losses, like I think they're going to be sitting there 8-2 going in the final 2 weeks. They lose to Georgia 8-3. And here's part of the reason too. You lose that Georgia game where everyone's hyping them up. Everyone's hyping up Kentucky as an SEC East dark horse. They got some love in preseason predictions as win the division. You lose that one, and then you got the rivalry game right after a fired up Louisville team that might have an unbelievably great offense this year, who are chomping at the bit to take down a beaten Kentucky team that thought that they could win the East this year. Upset potential all over it. Add insult to injury there. Give me the Cardinals to win on the road. I think Kentucky finishes 8-4. And also, we should also mention there Kentucky lucked out that Chris Rodriguez is missing the first 4. It looks like where it's only going to really hurt them in that Florida game. That's true. A big one. Like not having him for that game is bad.
No, that's a great call. That could be where they lose their first one because of that. Hopefully, I would like to see them get to the Georgia game with one loss, and that game actually means something, kind of like how 2018 did. But
Can I give you a Kentucky stat?
Yeah, hit me.
Kentucky had the best touchdown percentage in the red zone in the SEC last year at 72%. Great red zone team.
That's a quality stat right there.
It's interesting. Something to keep in mind where it's like when they get in the red zone, Kentucky finishes the drill with their run game and they just know what they're doing come red zone. There's nothing more frustrating than a team just not knowing what to do once they get in the red zone. The most frustrating thing about Tennessee football last year was 3rd and 1. Like they had no idea what to do at 3rd and 1 packages. Like that was just like, are we playing football still? What do we do at 3rd and 1? Are we still going deep? No. What are we doing? Tempo on 3rd. Like 3rd and 1 was a nightmare last year.
I got another stat for you. Kentucky has 5 9-win regular seasons in program history, and 2 of those came in the last 4 seasons.
Yeah.
So give me another 9-win regular season for the Cats. A lot of disagreements.
Almost all those
so
are in
far.
the last 30, right? Like Tim Couch probably had one, and Andre Woodson was another one.
I don't even think. No, I was surprised Woodson was not one of them. They ended up going, I think, like
Bear Bryant had to have one
that year. Yeah, Bear Bryant definitely had one. I think they had like a 1-loss season back in the day. That's probably Bear Bryant. But yeah, so another disagreement there. And then we got Missouri at 5.5. And I was searching bad for 6 wins on this schedule, and I could not find it. They are the team that they might as well join the ACC over here. If they're doing ACC things over here.
Go back to the Big 12.
Opening the season at Middle Tennessee State. What are you doing? You're in the SEC.
Wait,
Middle
are they?
Tennessee State.
I see LA Tech here.
You're seeing for Missouri?
Yeah.
Did I pull up?
You may have pulled up an old schedule here.
Now I'm feeling like a real idiot. Let me pull up Missouri's schedule here.
I'm seeing LA Tech here, and then at Kansas State in week 2.
Hey, if you say so. I saw Middle Tennessee State. I don't know how that messed up. Now I look like an idiot. My whole point is just mute at this point. Yeah, Louisiana Tech. I don't know why it says Middle Tennessee State. Garbage schedule grid I got here.
Sonny Cumbie, first game as the Louisiana Tech head football coach with the what are they? Bulldogs?
They are.
They just nothing Bulldogs though. Like it's a very deceiving Bulldogs. You never, I don't know. You just don't think about LA Tech and the Bulldogs. They always feel like something else. But they go to Kansas State on the road. ACU, Abilene Christian, I believe, at home week 3. At Auburn, Georgia at home, at Florida, at South Carolina, Kentucky at home, at Tennessee, and you end with freaking Arkansas. Dude, I'm with you, man. Like, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I think this feels like 4 and 8 to me.
I was about to say, I thought you were counting wins. I was like, where are you
No.
going? Yeah, 4 and 8 was exactly what I saw. I don't see them winning at Kansas State. I see them getting those other three out of conference games, and then Vanderbilt, and that's all I see them winning. So 4 and 8, we got an agreement there going under on the Tigers of Missouri.
Brady
Of
Cook
Missouri,
under center.
as some people call them.
Connor Bazelak out the building. I will say too, Tyler Beatty was a fantastic running back for several years in Columbia. He's out the door. He was the number 1 rusher in the SEC last year at 133 yards per game. And
yeah,
he's
he
just
was a
gone.
baller. Now they got Luther Burden in there, 5-star wide receiver. We'll see.
I'm sure Brady Hook, he's loving Brady Cook being his quarterback in the SEC.
Hey, he clowned Georgia for a tight end leading him in receiving, so that's why he didn't want to come to Georgia. So,
is that true?
Yeah, he did. And he, who led Missouri in receiving last year? A running back. So,
I could see that.
maybe it'll be different with him on the roster.
I have my doubts.
So, and then keeping it moving, we got the Gamecocks of South Carolina, 6.5. Here's the over-under. And I feel like I like South Carolina this year. But this schedule is not easy. So, assuming my schedule is correct, I printed off this grid from some SEC website. It's a quality grid here, but until I got one of them wrong. So Georgia State, they got to open it up. And then at Arkansas, Georgia, I think both of those are losses. Charlotte and South Carolina State starting 3-2. But at Kentucky, A&M, they've never beaten since joining the SEC. I don't think they're going to do it this year. Missouri, Vanderbilt, I think at Florida I have as a win, but even that is like, that's not necessarily a gimme. And then ending the season with Tennessee and at Clemson, it's hard to see more than 6 wins on this schedule. Like at Kentucky and I don't know, Tennessee, Tennessee, of those losses I just gave, Tennessee is probably the best one they have a shot at, just because it's at South Carolina. But I don't know. I think 7 is the absolute best I could see South Carolina this year. But I don't know. They seem more like a 6-win team. And they seem like they could be a good 6-win team, but it's a tough schedule. I'm going under.
I think it's 6-6 at the best case scenario. I think best case scenario is they make it to 6-6. I'm going to say 6-6 as my pick, but they're a huge wild card. I also keep that Georgia State one in the opener circled. Sean Elliott, a longtime Steve Spurrier guy, been with them forever. They have a strong run game. Georgia State, they love spoiling early seasons on the road in the SEC. I don't see if you recall Georgia State at Tennessee a couple years back.
I remember the thirst.
I don't know. That's something to monitor, man. They might overlook them just looking at Colorado or Arkansas on the road the next week and South Carolina on the road the week after that. They get Charlotte, Will Healy's team. I'm not certain they sweep those. I think they're on upset alert for one of those home ones.
No, they're winning all the cupcake games.
We say that about everybody. That's not how it works.
Good South Carolina team this year, though.
We say that. Hold on. So we say that. This is like one of those things that people are just saying. The same OC. We have the same one. I understand it's not Zeb Nolan under center anymore, and it's Spencer Rattler.
That's a huge upgrade right there.
We think.
Zeb Nolan. We're not just talking about going from just a D1 starter to Spencer Rattler. Zeb Nolan. This guy was not a D1 quarterback.
The Gamecocks were 54th in offensive S&P plus going into this year.
But you got to think it's going to be a huge...
No. That's what they have going into this year. That's what Bill Connolly has going into this year with this group, with Marcus Satterfield is still the OC. I don't see it. This offense, I still think, is going to suck. I don't think there's anything interesting about this team. I think people are completely overblown. I don't think the Spencer Rattler stuff works. Just spare me the South Carolina stuff. I would not be surprised if they don't go bowling. They are the most off-season team I've seen. Just every week, Shane Beamer's going viral for something else. I like Shane Beamer. Cool dude. Love to have him on the pod. I mean, I love having him on the pod.
I think you hate Shane Beamer.
No, I hate the award that he shared with Josh Heupel when Josh Heupel and I was in the building and they had stepped on their necks and we're up 28-0 at the end of the first quarter and just did not belong on the same field as the Tennessee Volunteers. But that is neither here nor there. I don't see it. I don't think South Carolina's. They're going to make an OC change.
I almost wish. What if we set this at 5.5? You going under 5.5?
No, we're doing what it is. No, you're not doing that. We got to do what it is.
Okay. I'm trying to make things interesting here.
I know.
Because I feel like I'm higher on South Carolina than you, but we both are going under on the 6.5.
Hey, Vegas does what Vegas does.
And then we got the Tennessee Volunteers here. And they are 8.5 is their over under. And I think this team's going to start 4-0. I think at Pittsburgh, we might be sleeping on that one a little bit, but I just feel like they're going to get that one done. And then Florida, this is the year they beat Florida. I want them to be 5-0. I desperately want Tennessee to be 5-0. College game day to come into Knoxville for that date, October 15th, third Saturday in October with Alabama, but I just can't see them getting out of Death Valley with a win. So that's a tall task. So I got LSU, but they're beating them for their first loss. Then I have them losing to Alabama. And then I got them losing to Georgia. But I have Tennessee beating everybody else. So I think they're going to go 9-3 this year. I think this is going to be a good team. But you're just going to play two of the top 4 teams in college football this year. And that's tough to do year in, year out.
It's hard. There's a path where they're 3-3 after the Alabama game, and fans are getting a little restless. Where there was all this optimism, and it's like, well, I mean, those 3 losses included. Maybe you could lose at Pitt, at LSU, and Bama at home, and those are all respectable losses in 2022. Like that would not be the end of the world. Sky's falling. Like this is a sneaky tough schedule for Tennessee this year. Like this is a tougher schedule than a year ago. There's some real landmines here. Like at Georgia, at South Carolina, at Pitt, at LSU. Like those are 4 real tough games, and you get Bama every year. Like Bama's just on the schedule where that's just a loss. And I'm concerned. Like we're going to know if they're a 10-2 team or a 7-5, 6-6 team after September. At Pitt is just the way Tennessee fans talk about this one. I just think it's completely misguided, where Pitt's a really good football team. And they're going in. There's a reason they're going in ranked in 16 AP poll. Have a great defensive line, Keaton Slovis and company. Like this is not Mark Whipple's offense because they were scoring too much for Pat Narduzzi last year. So the offense won't be as scary for Tennessee. But yeah, Tennessee should beat them. But would I be surprised if Tennessee dropped one to Pitt or Florida? No. I will say the Smoky Grays coming back for the Florida game is a good look, and that's a good vibe right there. So you want that because that was the last time Tennessee beat Florida was with the Smoky Grays. So you got to do what you got to do to shake the bad juju out of there.
And they're just a great alternate uniform. Everybody's got the black jersey they can rock, like whatever.
Well, I've heard the black jerseys are not going away, by the way.
They need to. They don't need the black. Although if they rock the black helmets, they would.
No, here's where and someone made this point. I agree with this. If they did this every year, I think this is okay. They play Kentucky on October 29th at home. If the black and orange was the Halloween uniform they just wore at the end of October every year, like the Happy Halloween black and orange, I think that'd be good. The dark.
That's what Georgia and Florida fans have said for years, to rock black versus orange for Halloween, because it's always right around there, the Georgia Florida game. But yeah, you could do that. I'm curious to see what they're doing. This is Smoky Gray series. They're not going to be the same ones every year, but
yeah.
Just rock those same ones. The Smoky Grays are a solid alternate. Tennessee's got that gray thing going for them that not everyone else does. You could be like Iowa State and just rock black and white uniforms, even though your colors are burgundy and gold. And you see Minnesota recently busting out some black and white unis. I think they're like a hint of dark red or burgundy or whatever
they're
in
terrible.
there. But yeah, you're burgundy and gold. Why do you even have colors? Why do we even have team colors if you're just going to rock black and white uniforms? Grinds my gears, sir. I said I couldn't promise that being the last uniform.
I knew it wasn't going to be
conversation. But But yeah, it's interesting that in any scenario of a team that you're playing a home and home series with, to lose the first one at home and count the second one on the road as an automatic win. Like it's just in no scenario is that going to be an automatic win, even though I am predicting Tennessee to beat Pitt. But I think they get off to 4-0.
If they're 4-0, I think they end 10-2.
Florida, to get Florida early in the season like that, I think I don't have much confidence in what Florida's going to be.
Well, if they get 4-0, I think there's a real path to 5-0 Bama at home. Like if you're 4-0, the vibes and this team must be clicking on all cylinders. The secondary must be good. The pass rush must be a lot better. Like that's the whole thing. Is defense was like what?
Those first four aren't necessarily the best teams. Like Pitt could be a whatever 6-6, 7-5 ACC team, and Florida could be a team that misses a bowl game. So it doesn't necessarily mean.
But it means a lot for Tennessee and the psyche for Tennessee. Like if they get through those two. And they just are like, all right, we made it through this September. I'm telling you, in that building, there is get through September unscathed. Like that is the mission. Like no one's thinking about anything past Pitt and Florida. Like just get through those two. And if you're 4-0 going to Death Valley, you're feeling pretty good because I think it will take some time. It might be Jaden Daniels, it might be Garrett Nussmeier. It's gonna be back and forth.
Got a bye week going into Death Valley as well, so that won't hurt.
I'm going to go over, though. I'm going to say Tennessee goes 10-2 this year. I'm going to live with
10-2. Oh, because you're picking them to beat Georgia.
I am, and I think
who are the losses you're picking? South Carolina and Bama?
South Carolina and Bama are my losses.
Okay. Put it on the board. Over.
43rd defense, though. That's the thing to watch. Is if Tennessee's defense moves up to like the 30s, I don't think they can make the 20s. But if they're in the 30s, the offense is going to be in the top 3 in the country, like top 3. And it's just really hard not to win 10 games or 9 games with the top 5 offense in today's game. That they're going to boat race some people. And the defense just has to be a little bit better. We can't be in the 60s. Got to be in the 40s, 30s, somewhere around there.
Difference between ordinary and extraordinary.
That's right.
Just a little bit extra. Vanderbilt, 2.5 over under. I'm going over.
I don't want to talk about Vanderbilt. Do we have to talk about Vanderbilt?
I think they can beat everyone out of conference other than Wake, which without your boy for Wake Forest, I want to call him Riley Skinner. I swear.
Sam Hartman.
Every time. The Wake Forest quarterback's been Riley Skinner for the last decade.
All-time passing leader, though, Riley Skinner.
Oh, there you go. So I think without Sam Hartman, I mean, who knows how bad Wake Forest could be. But I think they're still going to be better than Vanderbilt. But I think outside of that, they can beat Hawaii, Elon, and Northern Illinois. So I'm going to take Vanderbilt with the over. Get them to 3-9.
Thomas Hammock, though, has got a good thing going at Northern Illinois. They're a good football team. I wouldn't say that that's a guaranteed win.
It's not a guaranteed win by any means for Vanderbilt, but I'm going to pick them with the over. It's year 2, sir. You know how I like year 2. Barton Simmons is really general managing that team to the top.
Hey, I mean, God bless him. I'm going to go under because it's Vanderbilt. I'm going to say 2-10 for the Doors. I also have a stat for you with the Doors. They lost their best pass rusher, by the way, for the season this past week. So that's not great. Tore his ACL. Vandy scored a total of 21 touchdowns a season ago, Matt Green. 21 the whole season. How many would you guess in comparison the Georgia Bulldogs scored last year?
Oh, man. I would guess Georgia scored probably like 50?
73 touchdowns for the Georgia Bulldogs last year. 21 for the Vanderbilt Commodores. That is an insane disparity. That
really is. 21 is it's not good.
It's just horrific. So we'll see.
And a lot of teams get that cupcake game where you can get a solid 6-7 touchdowns. Like
not Vanderbilt.
You are that game. You don't get that game on your schedule.
Yeah, no. Vanderbilt, hard times. Can't do it.
All right. Let's go to and then your SEC East champion?
The Georgia Bulldogs.
The Georgia Bulldogs that would be the 5th SEC East title in the last 6 years for Georgia if they can get it done. And let's go to the SEC West. We got Alabama, 11.5 is where we got the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm going under on this.
Wow.
I think Alabama's going to be really good this year, but I think what people kind of forget is just how many close games they played last year. Like, what was it? 5 games that were decided by one score or less. Like that's kind of unheard of when it comes to, or one score games, not one score or less. But 5 games that were that close. You had Arkansas, you had the Florida game, you had Auburn, like A&M. Like these weren't just really good teams that you were playing close games with. Like these were all basically middle of the pack teams. So other than Arkansas, so I think Alabama gets tripped up. It's hard to pick the exact one that they lose, but I'm leaning at October 1st at Arkansas. I think that's a tough game right there. I think Arkansas is going to be one of the best teams in the SEC this year. I think A&M at home is solid. Like at Texas, obviously, if Quinn Ewers is a baller, maybe that game is a little different. But second game of your entire career going up against Alabama.
Alabama's going to crush Texas. That is one where I would be like, they're going to crush Texas.
I could see Texas giving them a game, but I just don't see Alabama losing there by any means. But so they're going to have an easy, most likely a 4-0 start. But I think Arkansas can get them. I think that's the most dangerous one. At Tennessee, also the third Saturday of October, we talked about. Mississippi State is a dangerous team, but they get them at home. But even last year, like LSU was like a 20-14 game, like with a bad LSU team. So it's hard for me to pick Alabama. Like, do we know Alabama's just going to be just significantly better than they were a year ago?
Yes.
Like, I just don't see that necessarily. Like, how much better does Bryce Young get? I mean, the guy's a Heisman winner.
Well, here's the thing. It's interesting you say that. So I don't think it's a Bryce thing. It's not a Bryce thing. They were 75th in rushing offense last year. If you watch those games, like the injuries with their run game and the loss of Najee Harris, they did not have a consistent run game. Bryce Young had to do a bunch for this Alabama team last year.
Yeah, it was the fewest yards per carry they've averaged under Nick Saban last year.
That was their weakness. People talk about the defense. The defense, I think, was 18th in scoring defense in the country. Like the defense was not a problem.
Yeah, the defense did not get enough credit.
People overblew just the problems there. It was like, no, the defense is fine. Like the defense is fine in Alabama. It was the run game. That was the issue with Alabama last year. It was so weird to see that after just so many just consistent years. And like you said, with their lowest yards per carry ever. That's why I just think Jahmyr Gibbs is so critical to the Alabama bounce back. Is just Bryce will be just as good. They'll figure it out wide. I'm not worried about that. They have really talented tight ends. The offensive line, I think, is a shaky thing. We'll see on that front. I think it was kind of shaky last year, and Bryce got hit a lot. And I wonder if it's a little bit of an issue. Maybe that's part of the reason their running game wasn't as great as it was. Because I think they moved on. They changed offensive line coaches. I think they brought in Kentucky's offensive line coach and what's his name, Doug Marrone, former NFL head coach, who was their offensive line coach this past year. He was not a good fit and quietly is no longer the OL coach. So I think Bama with Jahmyr Gibbs, new O-line coach, Dallas Turner, and Will Anderson on the edge. I think this is going to be very similar to the Mac Jones team 2 years ago. And I think Bama goes undefeated. And I don't think Bama loses a football game this year.
Mac Jones, that's one of the greatest college football teams of all time.
I think this team could be that again. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is my Heisman pick. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is winning the Heisman.
Wow. See, I just don't see that. I think this offensive line, I don't see them being significantly improved from last year. Like, I think this could also be a question mark again this season. And also, like I kind of alluded to earlier, like Jameson Williams was elite of elite. Like, that's just a true game breaker. Like Tyler Harrell, if I'm pronouncing that name wrong, from Louisville. Like, this guy was a big play guy at Louisville last year, but he had 18 catches. He had 18 catches for over 500 yards, averaging almost 30 yards a catch. But he had 18 catches a year ago. Like, Jermaine Burton was a really good receiver for Georgia. Like, this guy is not a star. Like, I don't see either of these guys being the first round talent that Alabama's just consistently had at wide receiver. And I think it's telling that they had to go to the portal for 2 guys for essentially both of their starting receivers this year. Like, Ja'Cory Brooks is a 5-star receiver coming out of high school. he obviously made that big catch in the Auburn game, but like, is that a guy that Saban is worried about taking the next step? Like, it just seems interesting how much they've needed to go to the portal. And I mean, you kind of saw like what Alabama's offense was after those top two receivers went down a year ago. Like Jermaine Burton, like I'm not just trashing him because he left Georgia or anything. Like I think Jermaine Burton, as he battled some injuries last year to in the offseason and kind of starting the season. But there was times where Ladd McConkey was just getting snaps ahead of Jermaine Burton, like at his position. Like, so I just don't see them having this elite receiving core that we're used to of this Alabama ever since, Amari Cooper and on, right? Like just every receiver they've had has been a first round pick, it seems like. So I just don't think this Alabama offense seems like they're going to be better than they were a year ago. And the defense is good. I don't know if it's, the best in the SEC. It could be. But I think with all of that Georgia loss defensively, like Georgia still has the potential to have a better defense than Alabama. But I just don't see this offense being as explosive as they were a year ago because Jamison Williams is just a lot to lose. Like, I just don't think they replaced him with another elite talent like they've done over the last 5, 6, 7 years.
We shall see.
It's hard to pick the exact loss for sure. Like Arkansas, I'm not saying Arkansas is a better team than Alabama, but with the fact that they did lose a game last year and played so many close games, I don't know. I don't necessarily see this team going undefeated. I think their schedule is tougher in the SEC West than, say, Georgia in the East. But you're going over. I'm going under. Arkansas. Had to check this one a couple times. Over under at 7.5, sir.
Oh, this is an easy one.
Hold on. I think I saw someone. Yeah, 7.5. That's what we got with Arkansas. I'm easily going over on Arkansas. I think this team could potentially go 10-2 this year. I think they're at absolute worst. This is an 8-4 team. Like Cincinnati just had 10 guys drafted. Cincinnati is not ready to reload. Like that's the best.
They haven't even named a quarterback yet.
That might be the best Cincinnati team we ever see. So while that is a big game for both teams, I think they take care of Cincinnati. South Carolina, Missouri State to open the year. The big 3-game stretch is right there at the end of September and October for them at A&M. This is in Jerry World, I believe. Alabama at home and at Mississippi State. I think there's a chance they could lose 2 of those 3 games, and they might actually beat Alabama. I don't know. There's some weird things that are going to happen. A&M and Mississippi State are just real dangerous games. And obviously Alabama is the juggernaut. So, but after that stretch, they could lose all 3 of those games, honestly, and still end up 9-3. They go at BYU, at Auburn, Liberty at home, LSU, Ole Miss, and then at Missouri to end the season. I think this team's at worst 8-4, and I could see them going 10-2 this year.
KJ Jefferson's the most slept on just quarterback in this conference, where I love Hendon Hooker, obviously, but if you told me KJ Jefferson was the number 2 quarterback in this conference, wouldn't really have a problem with it. I mean, the continuity on both sides of the ball is incredibly important there. I losing Treylon Burks will hurt a little bit, but this team ran the ball extremely well. I think they were actually number 1 as a team in rushing offense in the SEC this past year with Kendall Browse and company. They know their identity. They know how to play. The defense is going to be great. Barry Odom's just been a godsend coaching that defense, and he just seems more equipped to be a DC than a head coach in this league. I just see 9-3 to me. 9-3, 10-2 at the absolute most, but this is an easy over for me. I think the Hogs are in really good shape right now, and they cleaned up in the portal too.
Yeah, that's why I had a double take. I was thinking 8.5 would be the line on Arkansas. I think the Razorbacks are going to be damn good this year. So
I agree.
Both going over there. And then we got the Auburn Tigers at 6.5.
This is tough.
This was really tough for me. So you can go first on Auburn.
TJ Finley, like you said, probably the best option of the group. I also have written they're kind of a chaos team, and they're in the blue chip ratio. This is important to remember. So it's when people freak out. Brian Harsin didn't just forget how to coach. The stuff with Brian Harsin is more of like, is he a culture fit? Is it like the off the field stuff? Is he going to do the Bo Jackson golf tournament? Is he going to ingratiate himself with the Auburn community and the powers that be? The coaching acumen has not gone anywhere. He won a bunch of games at Boise State. He's a really good football coach. He now has the full Boise staff, Derek Mason, Mike Bobo, out the building. And this is just full Boise down there. Do I think this is sustainable? No. This is Auburn. This is not sustainable. The recruiting's not there. They're behind in a lot of ways. Like, this is not sustainable. For right now, though, yes, I do. Mercer at home, San Jose State at home. I think they'll beat Penn State at home, Mizzou at home. They're 4-0, I think, for that CBS afternoon game against LSU on October 1st. I think they beat LSU too. They're at 5-0 going into the Georgia game, which is just, that could be a chef's kiss type thing with those two. That's what you want. Georgia and Auburn both being undefeated at that point would be a lot of fun. I think Auburn, you look at the second half, though, is when things fall off a cliff. I think Auburn fans are going to be feeling good. Auburn's back. We're feeling great. Then you get your ass kicked by Georgia. I think that's coming. So you go to Georgia. I think they lose 2-3 touchdowns. Go to Ole Miss. I think they lose at Ole Miss. They get Arkansas at home. Think they lose to Arkansas at home. They go to Mississippi State. I think they lose to Mississippi State. They get Texas A&M at home. I think they lose to A&M at home. They get Western Kentucky at home. So the bleeding stops. Just the, oh my God, stop, they're already dead. That meme. That stops. And then they go to Alabama there to finish. So I think it's going to be a tale of two halves for this team. I think they're going to be all the best vibes in the world. And I think Harsin is going to finish with like this. The fans are like, oh my God, this was horrific. Just the slate of losses on the second half of this calendar is just brutal. I don't think I've seen a worse second half calendar for any SEC team than Auburn, where just brutal. Matt
It's funny because I actually have one that's worse, but you almost predicted the schedule the exact same as I did. I have them starting 5-0 as well because, I mean, we always talk about the year two head coach, right? It's almost like we're excluding Brian Harsin from that club because we think he's going to get fired. Like, he almost got fired after year one. There's a chance in year two, like we do see some improvements out of this team. Like, they lost a really close game at Penn State last year. There's definitely reason for optimism to think you could win that game this year at home. I think Auburn has, maybe the best home field advantage in the entire country. Like, that place gets absolutely rocking for big games. I agree that I have them starting 5-0. I personally have them losing the next 4 in a row, but I feel like they're gonna win one of those next 5 games. I think they're gonna get A&M. Like, but I think it could be Arkansas. Like, it could even be Ole Miss. Like, I think they're gonna get one of those games. Just because I just couldn't have them losing all of them, going from 5-0 to 5-5. So I was almost shocked when I did this. I have them going 7-5. Like, I thought I was going to pick Auburn to finish last in the SEC West before I made my predictions, but after just stacking up, going game by game, I think they get to 7 wins. And I think if they get to 7 wins, Harsin has to keep his job. Like, this is a great performance. To like 7 wins is going to require beating like a Penn State, an LSU, maybe an Arkansas or an Ole Miss or an A&M or something. Like, it's going to take a lot of good wins to get you to 7. So if they get to 7 wins, I can't possibly see them firing Harsin. But at 6-6, I could see it. You might just not have many like marquee wins at that point.
All right. Give me the under. We disagree.
Another disagreement here. LSU Tigers, another 6.5 here. I think they're the toughest team in the entire SEC to predict, personally. Like, I do have them starting off at 2-0. I have them losing to Mississippi State week 3, then winning New Mexico, losing at Auburn, and beating Tennessee. So that's starting 3-2 right there. the rest of the way, it's just they're one of these teams. I felt like I think I wrote it down here. I think I had I just go through and just give the automatic wins and automatic losses right out of the gate. I think I had them at 3-3 for I just had half of this schedule is just toss up games. They're one of the most impossible teams to predict. I feel like it's going to be Jaden Daniels that comes out of this with the start. It's funny because he feels like every quarterback that Brian Kelly's had at Notre Dame. Honestly, it's like the running athletic quarterback that's just kind of limited as a passer. Brandon Wimbush, Everett Golson, exactly. Ian Book's probably the best one of that group, but they just seem like they kind of have the same guy, and
they're Daniels solid. They're like the all solid 4-star who you can win a lot of games, move on their feet, but just it's not all there to win a playoff game or beat the big dogs.
Exactly. So I see them going 6-6 personally. I'm going to go under on LSU.
I got 7-5 for them in year one.
Disagreement.
I have 7-5, and I think it's a tough. If you were to tell me LSU goes 8-4, 9-3 this year, wouldn't be surprised. If you told me they go 5-7, I also wouldn't be surprised. Florida State in the opener, I mean, it's in New Orleans, so that's nice, but I mean, Florida State, there's some continuity there. I don't think that's a slam dunk for LSU's first game in Brian Kelly. That's Florida State wants that. They're going to be coming into that to the Superdome hungry. I'm not penciling that one in as a guarantee. They lost their last home game to Mississippi State and Mike Leach at home. They got blown out. The KJ Costello coming out party.
Costello Heisman.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of big games. I mean, I just don't like the road schedule. That's what I struggle with. At Auburn, at Florida, at Arkansas, at A&M, and then it doesn't really matter getting Bama at home. So I don't know. This is a tough schedule for year one for Brian Kelly. I think he's going to figure it out and he'll be fine, but I think this year is going to be a tough one, and I don't think the quarterback play is going to be all that great. So give me 7-5 for the Tigers.
All right, and now we got the Bulldogs and Mississippi State. This was another one that I feel like I had my perception on what I was going to do, how I felt about them before just actually tallying up the wins and losses. But I think they're going to go off to a 4-0 start. They don't really have much out of conference. Memphis, at Arizona. At LSU is definitely not going to be easy, and then Bowling Green. But I see them going on a little losing streak. That 4-game stretch right there, I think in October is going to decide Mississippi State's season. So yeah, Texas A&M at home, Arkansas at home, at Kentucky, and at Alabama. I think you got to win one of those games to get over the 6.5. And I don't know. Oh, hold on. Actually, I'm looking at it wrong. No, I actually have them going. I do have them getting 7 wins. So I have them going 0-4 right there, losing all 4 of those games in the month of October. But they can still get to 7 wins, losing all 4 of those games. So I think there's reason to think that they can get to 7-5, because honestly, they could win one of those games. They could win at Kentucky. They could A&M and Arkansas both at home. Mississippi, and you got Georgia, I wasn't even considering. Mississippi State's going to get somebody at home. That's a lot of options to A&M, Arkansas, Auburn, and Georgia. They're going to beat 1 or 2 of those teams at home, I think. But I just don't know which one.
It's a brutal schedule. They return the most amount of production, 80% in the SEC. No team gets the most amount of talent back as the Mississippi State Bulldogs. They were also number 2. I thought this was interesting in the SEC in 10 plus yards per play, or 10 plus yards plays in the SEC last year, or as a whole, but just SEC as a conference. Bama was number 1. The offense worked. Will Rogers, year 3, we talked about, they've never won less than 9 games with a 3-year starter with Mike Leach. That's something to monitor. He hasn't won the Egg Bowl yet. He struggled winning the Apple Cup at Wazoo, and this one's last year was the year he should have done it at home. This year, Mississippi State should be better than Ole Miss, I think, but it's on the road. Georgia at home, like, yeah, that's great, but that's a tough draw. Like, you didn't want Georgia and Kentucky in the East this year. Those might be the two best East teams, depending on what happens with Tennessee. Like you said, Auburn home. He also has a tradition of losing a stupid game. Like, Mike Leach is going to drop one of Memphis, Arizona. I don't know which one he drops at Arizona or Memphis at home, but I think he drops one of them. And then at LSU, I'll give him a win. So I think they're 3-1 after September. Like you said, I think you have to get one in October, and I probably lean Arkansas at home, but we'll see. Just with their diverse play styles, and I don't think Arkansas wants to get in a shootout with Mississippi State. So then you're looking at what, 4-4 down the stretch there. I see 3-1. So I think 7-5 is where I'm at, but I think it's a really good 7-5. I think Mississippi State might be the best Big 12 team if you put them in the Big 12 this year. I just think it's just kind of unfortunate for them.
I could see it for sure because I felt like, this is a good team, and I'm looking at 7-5. That's it? That's all I got? But it's a tough schedule. And then Ole Miss, I was kind of surprised where this this win total was. It's 7.5. I'm just not as high on Ole Miss as most people. But going through this schedule, so like we said with Auburn, just a tale of two halves. That's exactly what I have with Ole Miss. I think there's a legitimate chance that Ole Miss starts 7-0, and then finishes 7-5. They start with Troy at UCA, which is, he says UCA. Who is that? Is that
who?
I don't even. It says UCA. I'm not even on the schedule I'm looking at. I don't even know what team that is.
I see Troy. Oh, that's Central Arkansas.
Central Arkansas they have. Okay. And then at Georgia Tech, Tulsa, Kentucky at home, at Vanderbilt, and then Auburn at home. I think that team can start 7-0, maybe 6-1.
Yeah.
But then you got this gauntlet down the stretch at LSU, at A&M, Alabama, at Arkansas, and then Mississippi State at home. And like you said, I think even though they are at home this year, I think this is the year
that might be worse than Auburn's.
Yeah, I think this year Mike Leach gets it done, wins the Egg Bowl. But yeah, I am starting 7-0 and finishing 7-5, not getting the over.
I also had them at 7-5.
This SEC West next year, man, it's gonna be wild.
They were first in turnover margin last year, by the way. Something to monitor. That tells me they were pretty lucky last year, and I seem to recall a Tennessee touchdown that was mysteriously called back because it was awkward, and they didn't want to the Tyler Barron strip sack touchdown where no whistle was blown, but the Ole Miss players were confused, so it doesn't actually count. But I just don't see that. I think that's a very jumbled stat, right? I think that's just going to flip. Kentucky was dead last in turnover margin last year, which I thought was interesting. But a lot of that, Will Levis, he turns the ball over. Will Levis likes to turn the ball over a little bit. And their defense also doesn't really force turnovers. It's just
Matt Corral was good at not turning the ball over a year ago as well.
And we'll see if Jackson Dart's like that. They got pretty lucky in first 10-win season ever for the Rebs, but no, give me the under 7-5.
I'm right there with you. And then last but not least, the Texas A&M Aggies, which I guess we know exactly
how I feel.
Where you're going with the Aggies at 9.5. I felt like I was being bold and going over on the Aggies. I see them going 10-2. Going by game. I have them starting 5-0 before losing at Alabama. And then I think they're just going to get upset somewhere else down the stretch, whether it's South Carolina. I personally have them losing at Auburn November 12th. But yeah, so I think I don't see them going through this year 11-1, but I think they're a really good team. I could see them going 10-2 this year.
Here's the best thing for A&M this year. They avoid Tennessee, Georgia, and Kentucky out of the East. That's a really good year to miss those three in the SEC East if you're trying to run the gauntlet, because the West is just brutal. And I think it just compounds it when you're a West team and you're like, All right. Well, if you're Mississippi State and you're like, we might break through this year, who'd we have? Oh, we've got Kentucky and Georgia from the East. Great. Great. Because that's like the difference between like if you get just Florida and Mizzou instead, like that's a 9-3 potential Mississippi State team, but it just sucks.
Props to Mark Stoops that we're even having this conversation. That Kentucky is one of the bad draws from the East.
But I think their one loss is at Alabama. I don't think they beat Alabama back-to-back years, and I think if I had to look and just say what I think is the biggest upset alert potential, you might disagree, but I think it's at Auburn. I think that's the one that I would circle as like, late in the year.
That's where I had him. That's where I had him losing the second one was at Auburn.
I have him in 11-1. I have the over. I think it's put up or shut up time in College Station, man. There's just too many players. They have too many dudes. You got to do it.
Also, don't know what time this game is on your wedding day, but sneaky game, Miami at A&M.
I think it's 9:00.
And that's a 9:00 game.
Oh, I mean 9:00 Central Time. I think it's like the 8 or whatever.
Okay.
I think that's the SEC nightcap game or whatever.
So, ESPN. And that could be a good one that we're not necessarily.
That's true.
Spend enough time on because we saw how Alabama just beat the brakes off Miami a year ago, but.
Samantha, that's enough. I got to take a break. Haynes King's driving late. They got the ball. I've got A&M in the college football playoff. Give me a second. Yeah,
that should go
over great.
So you might have to catch that one, on Sunday. A little DVR action. But I think Miami, Tyler Van Dyke, really high on him. So that's not necessarily a guaranteed win. I think A&M is just they're a tricky team to just predict to win all the games they should.
They have too much talent now in the quarterback room where one of these three did not work out. That's the other thing I landed on, where it's like one of Haynes King, Connor Wegman, or however you pronounce it, the 5-star kid freshman who's impressed by all accounts all summer, Max Johnson. One of those three are going to be really good. I think it will play itself
Johnson,
out.
Man, I mean, the guy's a good player.
You love Max Johnson. It's the Mark Richt connection.
I'm saying you transferred to just a loaded quarterback room. Like, I think you're the kind of guy that would be starting at a lot of programs in the country, and I wonder if you just made a bad decision to transfer to Texas A&M. Like, I don't know.
It sounds like Haynes King's going to be under center week 1.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, we'll see. I think it's also because his brother didn't his brother commit to A&M.
Yeah, he's going to be a true freshman, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so I think that's part of it too.
Yeah, there you go. Big time 4-star tight end. So you're going over on A&M, and that's going to give you Alabama coming out of the West, and I'm assuming Alabama winning the SEC championship.
That is correct.
So let's see here. We both got Alabama winning the SEC. We both got Ohio State winning the Big Ten. Both got Utah winning the Pac-12. But I got NC State in the ACC. You got Clemson, and I got Oklahoma in the Big 12, and you have Texas. So a couple disagreements in there, as well as who the runner-up is going to be as well. But that's our preview, sir.
There you go. Fun times.
Oh, also, I forgot to shout out the T-shirt in honor of our SEC preview. This is a shout out to the 2011 Georgia-Tennessee game. Rocky stopped is what that says for those of you listening along. The Isaiah Crowell year. I know he had a touchdown in that game. 2000, I think it was 24-12, 20-12, something like that. I think it was
because
the
of
game.
The Crompton win in 2009 that you were just reeling the blowout win by Tennessee the last time you were in Neyland. That it was
the reason I got the T-shirt. The reason I got the T-shirt?
No, just because like it meant more that time. The Rocky Top was like you got blown out last time, or the Brandon Boykin kick return touchdown was the one cool thing about that game for Georgia.
2010, no, Georgia.
No, I'm saying 2009. It was the last time you were in Neyland and you got blown out.
Oh yeah, that's true. That was the day I started working at Publix, actually. I remember I was doing my training, And people were like, we can either take an hour break or we can just go right through. And I'm just like, let's go right through. It's a Saturday. Let's get done with this. And I remember listening to Boykin's touchdown, punt return touchdown on the radio. The only bright spot of that game,
I was at that game.
Lane Kiffin, they put a whooping on the Dogs. But 2011,
shout out to friend of the pod, Jonathan Crompton.
This was a better experience for Dog fans. I think we had like the 3rd and 57 or something in that game at Tennessee. It was something terrible. Don't even know how it happened, but it was several false starts. I don't even know if maybe there's a fumble involved, but yeah, it was a bad time, a dark time for Georgia fans, but that was a bright spot within the dark times.
There you go. Matt Green, always a pleasure. Thank you as always, folks. If you enjoyed today's episode, guess what? This time every single week here on the Chase Thomas Podcast, like and subscribe on YouTube, youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. And of course, give us a 5-star rating and a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If that is indeed how you listen to today's program, we greatly appreciate it. Get in touch with the show, chasethomaspodcast@gmail.com. Love to hear from you guys. Matt Green, thank you as always, my friend. And I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.